Switcher's on.
Okay.
I think we got recording. All right. Well,
Man, between me forgetting my laptop and a couple other things,
it's been quite the Monday. No, I'm just kidding. It's not even Monday.
we had to fight through some adversity. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's been it's been like a whirlwind of the last week. I don't know about you, but I can't tell if it's Monday or Friday. Just kind of keep going. That's all I can
That's
think.
right.
Just keep going.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it was this week, but Kokomo sent us the text with the with the UFO pictures.
Yeah.
So
From a
UFO
real
sightings.
pilot.
Yeah.
Somebody citing it. So welcome to the Conspiracy Dad podcast. My name is Dante. This is Mr. Dave.
Hello.
We are both conspiracy dads, and Dave started out not a conspiracy dad. I'm pretty sure you're on some level of conspiracy dad at this point.
Yeah, I got a recording of Jane today calling the astronauts liars.
Can you do it?
Yeah, if you want.
Oh gosh, yeah, I want to hear that.
I'll try and keep it brief, but pretty funny. Yeah,
I'm wearing my Tesco shirt today.
Of course, she's pretty stoked that she made it on that last intro. Do you believe that we landed on the moon? No. No? I actually don't. You do?
Good girl.
What about them? Spaceship. Are astronauts truth tellers or are they liars?
Oh, you're going to get a call from the principal.
The next thing she says after that is, I hope the astronauts don't hear this. And I thought, especially Buzz.
Yeah.
He'd come at you.
He punched a guy.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think he's very tall, though. You could probably take him. He's very old.
I don't discount tall people. Short people, excuse me.
But he, even though he's not tall, he looks like a guy that could really hurt you. He just has that look.
Yeah, tall, short, long reach, short reach, doesn't really matter. The willingness to pull the trigger at the right moment, that's what you got to watch out for.
I had a buddy who always said, everyone's the same height when you're on the ground.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that too.
Jiu-jitsu moves there.
Yeah.
Well, have you had a good week?
Yeah.
Feeling well?
Good. Yeah.
I think I had a conversation with somebody over the weekend. It's funny, the more that we do this, and like people ask me, I don't know if this happens to you, as they'll ask me about what's going on or whatever, and they'll ask about the podcast. Like they've never listened to it, and they'll ask, what do you talk about? And I have all of these stories to share. It's almost like, well, buckle up, because did you know about Jolly West?
Yeah.
And it was at a dinner party. And so it is funny that it's given me a lot of fodder for conversation. And you do have to kind of temper how much of the fire hose you open up.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they gloss over sometimes.
I am really learning the nuance of that right now. Kind of like I was telling you last week, I was talking to a couple guys in a band I was playing in about like, hey, y'all, you hear that some people don't believe we landed on the moon. And they kind of got dismissive, and I wanted to talk about it like the whole way home. And they weren't interested.
Not even,
no, just maybe I'm bad at laying out the case. Maybe
I'm right. Like, that blows my mind. I've had that conversation 1,000 times with someone where I'll say, Jolly West, like, did you know that he killed our elephant with LSD? And they're just like, oh, it's interesting. And go on. You go, is that all you have to say about that the CIA killed our elephant with LSD? And that's it. They don't care. But that's a mouth breather for you.
If you didn't watch the elephant die, it's easy to kind of get back to what you're doing. That's what they want, man.
I came across. Did I tell you about the Miami massacre?
No.
This is one we can podcast about, but I told it at this dinner party, and I think it went a little bit too far. But it's a true story. That's the thing, is I keep saying, like, these are true stories, guys. It's real. So you can look it up, but it's about these two bank robbers, violent criminals in Miami back in like 88, I think. Maddox and Plotz, I think, were their last names. Anyway, there was this guy that was doing a podcast about it. His name is John D'Souza,
Mhm.
and he's a former FBI agent, and he's kind of the agent that Chris Carter based Mulder from X Files on
Oh,
that
cool.
guy because he really was the X Files guy for the FBI.
Okay.
And I think kind of because he was annoying and people didn't like working with him because he
Sure.
was into like weird, like he asked tough questions.
Yeah.
So they kind of threw him all these weird cases as like, here, figure this one out,
Yeah.
genius. And so this was one of his cases that he went down to Miami to investigate. And what happened was these two bank robbers we got cornered by the FBI and they're in a shootout and they won't die for some reason. Like they keep getting shot and they get back up and they kill a bunch of FBI agents. Like they're like in this crazy shootout. And finally one of the agents like blows the guy's neck off. And it's like
Mhm.
at that point they do die, but they've been shot like 5, 6, 7 times and didn't seem to slow them down at all. And so they said run their autopsies and they assumed they must be on PCP or
Yeah.
some sort
Right.
of really powerful drug that was making them have like superhuman strength. But then the autopsy comes back and the toxicology shows there's nothing in their system, not even alcohol, just nicotine, like from
The
cigarettes.
Texans.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
Okay.
But so they're scratching their heads going like, what these guys must have been on drugs. And they're like, no. So the guy, the D'Souza guy is investigating it. And he's like, the only thing they found, they told him that was odd was at their apartment or in their house or their apartment, they had built an altar and it was an altar to this Viking Norse god. It was, I think, called Loki or something like
Okay.
that. There was a berserker god of war, and they had been making sacrifices to this berserker god, and that was it. And the Vikings
That's a
would,
Kevin Smith movie
oh God,
trope. There was
yeah.
a couple of guys. I want to make love like berserker.
I haven't seen
I
that.
can't remember which one it is now, but
But that's where that
yeah.
was the thing that the Vikings did. They'd take mushrooms actually, and then they would
Okay.
have these sacrifices, and then they
What
go
would they
into battle.
sacrifice, like animals,
I
or
think so. I don't think it was people,
that's
but
nice. Good for you,
either way,
Vikings.
his point was, and the FBI didn't really want to hear it, was what is your explanation of this? This was a religious experience, a religious phenomenon.
Hmm.
And it looked like these guys were possessed by some demon god of the Vikings. And that's the best explanation for how they had superhuman strength and killed these other agents.
Vikings. That's pretty cool.
It's really cool. But
Yeah.
then you go, yeah, they were possessed by some demonic
Mm-hmm.
demigod thing. And it's like, that's really the explanation? Best we can figure.
Best we can figure.
And that's a cool one. I mean, you can look it up. It's Wikipedia that it's in there. It's just hard to believe.
And then they say, "Can you pass the carrots at
Yeah,
the dinner party?"
that's kind of how it went. I finished talking and just silence.
Yep.
Like, all right, well, if you want to know about the moon landing, let me know.
Yeah. I'm having trouble controlling the grubs in my yard.
Yeah. So that's what I've enjoyed about this. And I think by the end, when we get to the end of this, whenever that is, if you ever want to have an interesting conversation, come up to Dave or
Yeah.
myself. We'll have something to tell you.
I think that is what it will start to turn into, is people that are into kind of these niche pursuits, is that, yeah, they'll see you out in the world and kind of go, hey, I tried to talk to my neighbor about that Viking thing. He wasn't wanting to hear it, but I wanted to ask you more about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And then, yeah, you kind of get like an inside crew going, and maybe over time we'll develop either like a saying, that you can throw out to see if there's anybody in that's not a
Oh,
mouth breather,
yeah.
or like,
I mean, you could just say conspiracy dad. They're going to know.
yeah, right.
Like,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah. If you're a conspiracy dad, you're in, what is it? It's a safe place. Yeah.
a safe place. So we're going to try to move along with moon landing on this
Yeah.
episode.
I got to say, after thinking about this for weeks in a row, I thought, boy, I don't know if I've got the attention span for an episode more of this after today. So
I kind of thought the same thing. Let's
like,
do this.
drive it home.
Let's get as much in as we can, and we might switch to another topic and then come and revisit after we've
Mhm. Yeah,
done something else.
what occurred to me was, anybody that's that interested in this would take the time to dive into. I mean, there's a wealth of resources. Like you mentioned that press conference last week.
Did you watch it?
I watched a little bit of it. Is it, if I found the right one, it's like an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
Right. So
They were weird, right?
they didn't strike me as weird as I expected. So
Well, I think it's at specific parts. Like, I don't think the
okay.
entire
Yeah. I
thing,
mean, I
but
didn't watch the
there's
whole thing
moments
either.
where you're
Yeah.
watching it and it's like they're answering questions and they seem really uninterested in answering the
Mhm.
question or unimpressed with what they had just done.
Yeah. The part I watched, they're reviewing video footage that they had taken, and it's pretty rehearsed. I mean, they're scripted, reading off what had happened. So
I'd have to see it.
yeah.
But is it the one where they're all sitting at like a press conference, like sitting at a
Yeah.
table and they're taking questions from the press?
The part I watched, they weren't taking questions yet.
Okay,
So I
that's
hadn't gotten to
get
it.
to the question Q&A.
But I mean, that alone, I mean, there's an hour and a half of your life going to that. So all that to say, this is a 14-part series of articles that cites more websites and cites more video links and cites more photos. So
If you need a hobby,
this well is deep if you want to.
if you need a hobby, this is
But to just
Wagging the Moondoggie
yeah.
is a way to go.
But to continue piquing your interest, we'll kind of zip through like
Okay, where do we leave off?
well, we left off on 5, and we got a little bit into photography, which is something they talk about around Article 5 or 6. Articles 6 and 7 get into some of the present day missions that we've done, and McDowell is making the case of kind of why are they shooting for goals that we already hit. I mean, if we got a guy on the moon, why are we now sending like unmanned craft to maybe kind of
Yeah,
get a
like the
picture of them?
Japanese
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
just a few weeks ago.
But I thought here in Article 8, one of the ones that I thought was interesting as far as like making cases as to like just how ludicrous it was for us to have gotten this done, especially in hindsight, going, okay, this is the 60s. I know that these guys were like quote unquote space cowboys. But here he's talking a little bit about the testing and the simulators they were using. So he says, meanwhile, down in Texas, astronauts had been training on a simulator that was supposed to teach them how to land the lunar module. Unfortunately, the simulator was, quote, unstable and dangerous, never worked properly. No one ever actually landed the contraption. But on the plus side, there is lots of film stock of fiery simulator crashes. Let's see. Stoff notes that at some point in the program, NASA eventually stopped using it because it was just so dangerous. It was a lot safer to just land on the actual moon than to fly this simulator down in Texas. So that's what they did. They didn't figure out a way to like practice landing on the moon.
First time
they just shrugged
they
their
just did
shoulders
it.
and said, "Well, it'll be safer when we get up there. I'm sure it'll be fine."
That's
And
not believable.
there's there are a few other instances in these articles of things that tests that didn't go well, and then they just shrug their shoulder and pat the astronauts on the back and go, "Yeah, well, once you get on the moon, it's going to work great." And to like watching that press conference, as far as they say, everything did work great. That's one thing I noticed.
Everything.
They go, "Well, we touched, like, here's video footage of us touching down," which now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you mean touching down like you practiced with the simulator? And they're like, the machine worked flawlessly. We touched down. There was no problems with the dust, and we're able to exit the vehicle without any issue.
Yeah, that they had anticipated before that. I mean, run simulations on. They didn't know exactly how the surface of the moon was going to react to this massive jet
Yeah.
engine underneath the jet. I don't know if it was an engine, but it was some sort of jet propulsion that was okay. So the moon, it was have a sixth of the Earth's gravity. So
Yeah.
it's not weightless. Like,
Right.
yes, you're going to be falling lighter, but you're still falling. It's going to take a massive amount of energy to push back against that lunar module to keep it from just crashing and exploding on the surface of the moon. And so they had thought it might even be like the jet engine if the ground was too
Yeah.
powdery,
Mhm.
it could like create a massive
sink into
crater
it. Yeah.
that you just fall into.
Then you're
and
just like
stuck.
stuck like in
Yeah.
the mud almost, or
Yeah.
like in a desert, like a
Yeah, they
sand
didn't know.
trap. Yeah.
And so that's one of the biggest sticking points with the debunkers of the moon landing is you look at those pictures of that moon lander. I mean, there's not a speck of dust on it.
Yeah.
And there's no blast crater under the lunar module. Like it doesn't even look like it's been touched. It doesn't.
Mhm.
It's not like, oh, you can see a little bit. It doesn't look like anything has happened. There should be burn marks under it, but there's
Mhm.
none. I mean, I'm just saying, NASA, in those photos, there should be burn marks.
Yeah.
Nothing. So that's for me, like, honestly, the first thing someone pointed out about it that I went like, that's hard to, like, how do you not even have a burn mark?
Yeah, no burn marks. And like somewhere in all of these, they get into talking about currently one of the issues that NASA is struggling with is how to deal with the dust because you can't seal your doors properly when you're getting in and out of this
Yeah.
stuff. The spacesuits don't do well with moon dust. Yeah. How do you keep your equipment clean?
Or also all of the projectiles from space.
Yeah.
So, like,
That's a big one for
there's
me.
no
Yeah.
atmosphere to burn up. So when you're on the moon is getting pelted
Hmm.
with even like bullet size
Yeah.
rocks and
Mhm.
debris all the time.
Yeah.
You just look at the surface of it.
Hmm.
And they were like concerned like that would be a bullet going straight through
Yeah.
you. And that's a real possibility. But they got lucky, I guess,
They
you know,
didn't get by one of them.
or the shuttle or
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, they talk about the wall of the we might have touched on this last week. Talking about the wall of the spacecraft basically being just a couple of thin sheets of aluminum and like, you kind of almost had to watch, you couldn't bump it too hard with your elbow or drop a screwdriver,
Yeah.
poke a hole in it. Um yeah, how you managed to get 200,000 miles through space without catching one. I mean, I couldn't drive to Stillwater without a windshield full of bugs. And these guys managed to dodge every single little meteor that's flying through there. And then you're right, they get out on the surface of the moon and their suits don't catch any of these little meteorites. And you're right, if one of those tags your suit and it depressurizes your suit, now you're not insulated from the wild temperature swings. There's
Oh,
this,
you're done.
yeah,
Yeah. The vacuum of space too.
yeah,
Like you get
right.
out. Like, yeah, I
It's
don't.
a problematic for a lot of reasons.
I mean, I guess you could say, yeah, just got really lucky. How many times? 15? How many?
Yeah. Uh, Gosh, I don't remember how many times,
I
but
think 15 missions.
I think
We
so.
should know that if we're podcasting about this.
It's 14 articles worth of missions.
14 articles worth and not a single piece of space debris encountered.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's the next one?
The next article was where they mentioned the machetes. So last week
Yeah,
they
he
said, "Oh,
goes
they're big
through all
machetes,"
the things that they took.
and that's it's talking a little bit about the suits.
Uh-huh.
So these suits, I guess, needed to be able to defend against the little mini meteorites.
Bulletproof, basically.
Bulletproof. Yep. Let's see all the stuff they need to bring. Let's see. Oh, this is the modules. They'd require a propulsion system, navigation system, environmental control system, plentiful supplies, oxygen, water, food, heat shields, etc. Waste disposal system, which I'd like to get into waste disposal here in a minute. Shaving supplies, hygiene, etc. And for reasons left unexplained, machetes. So
Yeah,
that was it.
that was one that what could you possibly use a machete for in space?
Uh, I don't know. They use duct tape to fix
Cutting the
this.
duct tape?
That well, yeah, that'd be
I
it.
mean,
It just seems
it
like
just seems
anytime
that
you're
a
going to
machete
go
is for
on any
jungle.
kind of an adventure, a roll of duct tape and a machete,
Probably not a
you're
bad
good to
idea.
go. Yeah,
I agree with that one, NASA.
yeah.
Of all the things we disagree about, I agree.
I'm
Machetes in
picturing
space.
them like kind of the trope of like some of those comedy movies where they're like stripping. Oh, or like the Pearl Harbor movie with Ben Affleck and what's his face? Alec Baldwin is going, "These are fat ladies." They're trying to get all the weight off of the bombers so
Yeah.
they can take off the aircraft carrier. And like I'm picturing them taking all the parts off the navigation system, throwing out extra parachutes, and
At
then
some
like,
point, you need to chop something.
and then they go, well, let's get rid of the machetes. And Alec Baldwin's like, not, wait a minute, we need the machetes. So
I wonder if you could buy a NASA space machete somewhere, like a moon
that would look
machete.
great on the wall, like a
I would hang
framed
that right here.
NASA machete.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can find a picture of the actual machetes they took to the moon. I mean, he has to keep that. Like if you take a machete to the moon, you're taking it back home with you, right?
Yes. Yeah,
He must. I'm gonna ask him on Instagram what he did with the machete.
that's a good, yeah. It looks like
What if he posts a picture of it? That would be pretty awesome.
Lunar Replicas is the website, and it looks like you can get a M1 knife machete. I think this is like a replica, but it looks pretty sweet, and it's got a picture of the globe, oops, on it. $215. I mean,
I might have to buy that.
you can get a machete at Walmart for like less than $5, but it's not a
It's not a
M1 astronaut.
NASA.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you noticed that some people say NASA instead of NASA?
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend who's I didn't get much into the conversation because I don't think she listens to the podcast, but she does follow me on social media. And her dad was a NASA engineer during this on the Apollo program. And I
How
mean,
does she pronounce it?
but she would always say NASA, and I just go, "It's
How did her
interesting."
dad say it? Maybe we're wrong.
I mean, he's worked for NASA, so I don't know. I was really glad though that she didn't start grilling me on like
Yeah, I heard
any
what
of
you
this.
said about my dad.
I just said, yeah, we talk about that stuff sometimes. That's interesting.
I've been thinking about that off and on throughout the course of this. Like,
Hold on one second.
yeah,
Go on, you're good. Dogs fussing. Sorry, conspiracy dad. The scout needs to go sometimes. Gotta text my son and tell her to let him out. Keep going.
oh, I was just thinking about part of the pushback on this conspiracy theory is how did that many people keep it a secret? And the conspiracy theories pushback is, well, the Manhattan Project had hundreds of thousands of people involved, and that
Yeah.
was kept secret for a long time. And I think that part of the dynamic here is you don't need everybody to be compliant in this conspiracy. Like,
No, I think that
you really need
that
a
has to
small
be a
number.
part of it.
Yeah.
It has to be something where if you did it, all of the people like my friend's dad, like if it was a fake, they would all have to legitimately think it's real. I don't think you could have them all be in it. I think you'd have to set it up somehow where they're like everyone's game's going, everyone thinks that it's happening, but it's actually a broadcast feed. That in and of itself would be pretty amazing to pull that off.
Yeah.
But people say that about the Manhattan thing, and it's like, we do have programs like that where people haven't talked, you
Yeah.
know? So, but it would definitely be much safer and easier to set it up in a way where everyone was like a useful idiot that didn't know.
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, I saw him land on the moon. I was doing the controller, and it's like your controller wasn't actually doing anything.
So is the idea then that a lot of these useful idiots are doing real engineering work, but they're doing it more for like military application type stuff? Or I guess one of the things I grapple with as I'm listening to this and going through it is are are NASA engineers, they're doing real math. I mean,
Yeah.
not they can't not know that they're doing real math. Um, and they're doing real engineering. So are some of them like early in the project, what I get the sense of is, let's say, early in the 60s, Kennedy says we're gonna get on the moon before the end of the decade. NASA sets out to do this for real. Pretty quickly goes, "God, this is not gonna work." And not long after that, I don't know. Like at one point in one of these articles, there's a software engineer that's like a pretty entry level guy. He's just out of college, and he goes, "Yeah, you'd think they would have given me some specifications on how this spaceship, how far it needed to travel and what it needed to do, but they really just let me write my own code, like whatever I wanted to."
Yeah.
And like that is pretty bizarre. I guess the point I'm making is that these engineers and these software programmers and everybody else that's involved, they're doing legitimate work, but to what means or to what end are they doing it? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you're talking about a faked landing, the you'd want to keep the number of people that know about it as small as
Sure.
possible. So
Yeah.
it's like Buzz and the guys and maybe two or three other guys on top, but you would want it to be. So, I mean, I think that they would think that they're actually running numbers, but it's not actually doing anything.
Another thing that I think about is like the Buzz Aldrins and the Neil Armstrongs of the world. All of these astronauts. Do you think that if it is a conspiracy, if they have to know it's not true? I mean, they know if they didn't go on the moon. Um,
Unless they're like MK Ultra and
okay,
they've
so
been like
maybe they
brainwashed
believe
to
they
think
went to
they
the
actually did go to the
so
moon.
my thought was like, well, maybe they see it as like these are good soldiers. I'm not denying that. So are they thinking like this is ultimate service to my country to like keep this narrative moving forward
I think so.
to take
I
out,
think that would be
to combat the Russians?
I don't know how you'd pull it off. I mean, because the engineers would have to be receiving information, data back and forth. There's communication happening the whole time. Maybe they just stuck in low Earth orbit the whole time and fed phony numbers back or something. I don't
Mm,
know.
yeah.
I mean, the faking it would be, I think, going there definitely seems pretty hard,
Yeah.
but also faking it would be pretty damn hard.
Right.
So
It seems like faking it would be easier then, which is why I think this conspiracy theory picks up steam over the decades to follow. One of the points that I keep coming across in these articles is NASA keeps coming back. So again, I'm thinking like, well, these are legitimate engineers and scientists that are earnestly trying to get us
yeah,
further into this space, project. And they keep coming out with these press releases saying, well, we think here in about 20 years, we're going to get a man on the moon. And this is, decades after we've already allegedly
I
done
know.
that. And it's almost ad nauseum to the point where you're like, yeah, we got it in these articles, except for it's such a good point. Like, um, I had to work on my car last week, and I've done it once or twice before on this particular car. Every time I get into that car, I've I'm a little more familiar with the mechanics of that engine, right? So how is it that we just like are totally regressed and cannot get back to where we
That's the
were 50
biggest.
years ago?
I think that's the biggest thing that sets people off to
Yeah,
say, why can't we put it? You'd think that going to the moon now would be just like going to the desert. It'd
sure.
be,
Yeah.
a little bit of a trip, but it's not
Yeah. If we
impossible.
did it once, at this point, it would be, you'd think we'd have like somebody we'd have a space station up there, you know?
Yeah, and if you go back and you listen to our favorite Werner von Braun
Yeah.
and the things he was doing with Disney, the TV programs and stuff, like that's all they were talking about. It's like building a space station and building a moon station and like plan to have like laboratories on the
Well,
moon
that's
and
like what we do to build an empire, right?
yeah.
I mean, explorers, before we had the whole globe mapped out, you'd go out across the ocean.
I think
Find
even
a
I heard astronauts would talk that way back then, like, that had gone and coming back and like, wow, it'd be great. In a few years, we're going to have a post out here and we're going
Yeah,
to be
right.
exploring and doing more science.
Stay for a little longer each
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
get a little more permanent
And for
footing.
some reason, it was just, it's not important anymore.
Yeah, they act like there's nothing to see. Ah, we already did that.
Well,
Been there.
even one of the guys that he has in his article, he's said something about like the moon is just basically a big empty parking lot.
Yeah,
It's like we still study barren, remote places on this planet forever. You know what I mean? Like, the
right.
idea that
Yeah.
like barely walking around on the surface a few times that exhausts everything
That's
scientifically that we
yeah,
need to know
right.
about this
Uh-huh.
satellite around the planet. That's not even. It seems stupid to think that way.
Well, that and we don't even so like to your point, we don't even know if there's water on the moon. I mean, in one account, it's we know these are moon rocks because there's no water in them. And then at another point, NASA makes a comment that, well, we're going to go and check out the possibility of like drilling in these canyons to unfreeze water in the moon.
Hmm.
So, I mean, at this point, the jury's still
There's
out on,
definitely much to be discovered
yeah,
about the moon. There's no way that we captured it all. We haven't even seen the high definition original footage
right.
of
And
walking around on the moon.
somebody needs to go back and retrieve the poop.
What was your hang up on that? They
just
just
that
dumped it all?
just that it's up there. Like, what an American thing for us to do is just leave our trash on the moon.
What are you gonna do?
Where is that? There's a funny bit in there about
Moon poop.
yeah, moon poop. Man, I had it because It's actually we don't need to go retrieve it. The thing is actually do not. The thing is that we don't want anybody to pick it up. You're supposed to leave it if you find it. Like that's a real thing. It's a it's a piece of history. Where is it?
So
Here we go.
what chapter are we on right now?
Well, if we're talking the dung on the moon, we're at 13.
Oh,
So I
well,
mean, we're blazing
we
through. Yeah,
skipped a lot there.
yeah. I didn't mean to jump ahead so far, but that just was such a weird standout to me. We can come back to it. Um. Ooh, Article 10 is where he starts talking about Laurel Canyon,
Oh yeah. Do you
which
know
is
about that?
just. I mean,
I've told you some about that,
yeah,
right?
you told me about it, and then I thought, oh, we should do something on Laurel Canyon, and then I realized that
That's what he's actually famous for.
at this same website, there's a whole
McGowan
big chunk.
McGowan started out investigating the CIA's connections to the Laurel Canyon music scene back at the birth of the hippie
Mhm.
revolution, and he digressed from that
Yeah.
that piece of research to do the moon landing because he was kind of burned out on that, and then he went back and finished
Mhm.
it. But we'll do some on the Laurel Canyon. But basically, in a nutshell, he's connected many leaders in that scene, artists, musicians, influencers to military intelligence and CIA, and like it just gets a little weird after a while where it's like, Jim Morrison, his dad is Philip Morrison,
Mhm.
Colonel Philip Morrison, and he's the guy that started the Vietnam War by lying to the Congress about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And it's just weird to say like you're the hippie anti-war movement guy of America. His dad literally is the guy that started all of
Yeah.
it, and it's hard to believe that that's just. You could look up pictures of Jim Morrison. It's like 2 years before he's the guy that he's clean cut, clean shaven on a military base, looking at stuff with his dad. So he looks like he was military in some way, and so was there were a lot of other people in that he connects. It's an interesting podcast, or same thing. He does this thing where he just connects all these dots, and whether or not it leads to the correct conclusion, it is still interesting to connect those dots. And like I didn't know that about Jim Morrison, that was his dad, and Jimi Hendrix was military as well, and uh, Dave Crosby was family of CIA.
God, that's a weird one. I don't know
Yeah, there's
why
a
that
lot of
one's
weird ones
strange to
that,
me.
and it's not necessarily, it doesn't say something except that you go like, well, how many people do you know whose family are deeply connected in the CIA or other military intelligence
Yeah,
or
not a
something?
one.
I know one. I know
Yeah.
one woman whose parents are CIA, and she was too for a bit, but definitely don't know like 30. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually Article 11 where he's talking a lot about Laurel Canyon and
What
the
was he
connections
saying?
there.
Connection to the moon landing.
Let's
Oh,
see.
the studio where they made all of the. Is that what it was about? Where they could have made these lunar landing videos?
Let's
It was in
see.
Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
That's what it
Well,
was.
it's yeah. In the first series of posts, I mentioned that the Apollo story was connected to the Laurel Canyon story by way of a facility known as Lookout Mountain
Yeah.
Laboratory. That's the intelligence community's top secret, state of the art film studio nestled high in the Hollywood Hills. There you go. As it turns out, there's another interesting connection as well. During the span of precisely 1 month, during the infamous summer of 1969, which I believe is the summer of love, the Laurel Canyon and Apollo stories reached a simultaneous climax of sorts. So we have the kind of the juxtaposition of Apollo 11, along with let's see, you've got Woodstock at the same time, which is pretty wild. So
Yeah, and
quite a time to be
knowing
alive.
knowing that how much involvement the CIA had in that whole movement, it's like,
Yeah,
man, we were getting pulled left and right.
man. Uh, yeah, this is yeah. Specifically here, he says, let's see, yeah, all these killings. Talking about now, we're talking about Charles Manson. All these killings later would be attributed to Canyon regular Charles Manson and his family. Less than a week after the killings, some of Laurel Canyon's premier bands took stage at Woodstock. Sorry, that doesn't help you very much as far as making the connection. Except for that's all within a month of each other.
Yeah.
You've got July
Did you
1969.
did you hear last week that Robert Kennedy Jr. came out and finally publicly called out the CIA for killing his dad
No,
or for
I
killing his
didn't hear
uncle?
that he publicly did it. No.
You know, he did. So he's running for president now.
Yeah.
20% of the vote. Actually, he's really polling stronger than people thought he would. And he finally came out and said something about like beyond the shadow of a doubt. You know, like, yes, the CIA definitely played a significant role in orchestrating the assassination of his uncle. And what he doesn't say there is that, you know, he knows it. Like, well, then they definitely killed his dad too. Like
Right.
the idea that
Yeah.
like, well, we killed JFK, but we didn't kill RFK. You know, like,
That
no.
sounds like, yeah, like if you want to get away with something, you always admit to a little bit of something
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
That's, I mean, if people want to just think about the significance of that, I mean, I'm sure that Robert Kennedy Jr. has wrestled with how to respond to these questions for a long
Yeah.
time.
Mhm.
I've listened to interviews with him when he was a young man, and people would ask him. But for him to come out as a presidential candidate and say that publicly, that's
It seems
it's
crazy.
very
Like, does
crazy.
he have a death wish?
That's what
Like,
people
that's
have asked him. Like, are you
yeah.
worried about if you get too involved in this, you might? And he said something like, just like my dad and uncle, I look at it like an occupational hazard, and maybe, you know.
Hmm.
But I think by putting it out there early, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, if he gets killed in some weird
Yeah.
way now, it's going to be pretty obvious that it was probably not an accident.
That's
But
sort of like Elon Musk making it very public that he is not
of course, like Bob
suicidal.
Lazar going to George Knapp and saying, you know, all the Area 51 stuff. So they
Mhm.
can't kill me now.
Right.
It's on local
Yeah.
news.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know that whole story or not.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm familiar with it just from
From talking to me.
yeah. Well, from yeah. And yeah, mostly from talking to you.
He pulled a Lazar is what he did.
That's
He just
well
get it out
said.
in the news and,
Yeah.
you know, less likely to slip in the bathroom and fall on some bullets, you know?
Yeah. I like that expression.
Oh, but that's significant. I think, if you want to think about this whole time frame and, the idea of would the agencies or government be pulling shenanigans? Would they lie
Well,
to you in
this is
some
after
massive way? Like,
yeah.
just a few years before they killed the president.
Well,
Of
yeah, and
course
this
they'd
is
fake the moon landing.
and this is after a whole decade of lies about the Vietnam War, right? I mean, we're
Lots of lies.
yeah,
Martin Luther King.
that's one thing that crossed my mind today was going, okay, let's say this moon landing thing is true. Well, that would be like the only thing
The
the
only
government
honest thing you've said in the past decade.
exactly. So you're telling me like
Since 54,
it's starting to
this is the
come
only
out
thing.
now that there's some shady stuff with
I know we
Kennedy's
killed the
assassin.
president. I know we
Yeah,
killed
yeah,
Martin
we
Luther
weren't
King.
totally
I
honest
know we
about it.
killed Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
But we landed on
But
the
we
moon.
honestly did
We
land
did
on.
land
I know
on
you're
the
not going to
moon.
believe this, but there is one thing we really did do, and that is we went to the moon. Well, cool. Let's do it again. Yeah, can't do it
Can't do
again.
that.
Okay. Yeah.
That is odd.
So
That's
that
very
is
strange.
why, and this is where it gets like the hole starts to open up deeper as you go, well, if that was 50 years ago, like, well, it's not like the government got to the end of the 60s and was like, "Phew, guys, we really lost our heads there."
Let's get it
Let's-
together, guys. All right, we're just playing it
Yeah.
straight from here on out, guys.
Yeah, and
no more
until-
funny business.
Until you like, I haven't followed the 70s enough, but fast forward a couple more decades, and now you've got George Bush, George Sr. in office, a member of the Skull and
Bones, yeah.
head of the CIA, you know, sending weapons to the Middle East to help them liberate their countries. Like, oh gosh,
Yeah.
what was going on all this time?
Not MK Ultra, I'll tell you that, because that program ended in
Oh, that's right.
1977.
Thank goodness.
Never again. You know, that was the
This is going to be a well-documented case of me just completely going down.
yes. You're going to be Eddie Bravo by the end of this, and you're going to be totally flat Earth. Space is fake. We're run by
Yeah,
the government's
that's
run by
right.
reptilians and
Birds or
Nordics.
drones. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't forget what I was going to say.
Sorry, I didn't.
Oh yeah, MK Ultra. That never ended.
Yeah.
I told you about that when I realized researching Jolly West, more about him that Timothy McVeigh was MK Ultra, I think.
Yeah, I think you
I
did
did.
mention that to me.
But that just blows my mind. I mean, it cannot be that the guy that ran MK Ultra and then he meets with Timothy McVeigh 17 times. And you go, well, I think it might have had something to do with
Right.
that. Like, I don't know exactly what they
Yeah.
were talking about, but I just know he was the MK Ultra doctor.
One thing, sorry, just talking about MK Ultra and propaganda and
We
Hollywood
derailed. I'm
Hills, we
sorry.
derailed, and I thought, okay, well, this is sort of to get us back off of
Okay,
that
moon,
tangent onto this.
moon, moon, moon.
Well, did you read much in through here where they're talking about the silent film De Franc et Monde that looks an awful lot like our moon adventures?
I do remember reading about it, but I
So,
don't, not the specifics.
um, that's in this article 12 where he cites this. It's a German film from it's from 1931 by filmmaker Fritz Lang, and
Good name.
yeah, Fritz Lang, Lang. Um,
Or I just meant Fritz, but
Fritz, yeah, that's your youngest, yeah.
well,
Um,
my grandpa.
oh, is that right?
Yeah, his name's
Oh, I
Grandpa.
thought you were just going for like a rhyming thing, but
No.
it was your
You know,
granddad.
funny thing, not to derail real quick, but
Yeah,
like all of Schmidt's kids, it's a very hard last name to say. So like
sure.
when we were all like 2, 3, 4, we would say Smitch or something. We couldn't
Mhm,
say it right. And it's
mhm.
like, it's kind of everyone in the family knows that.
Yeah.
And then Fritz, our youngest,
Mhm.
he, as soon as he could speak, he'd say Schmitz perfectly. And I was like, man, first Schmitz that can say Schmitz, you know? And then my dad pointed out, well, yeah, he's used to saying Fritz.
Yeah.
And that's that Z sound. I was like, he says it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, no Schmitz has ever said their name perfectly until he came along. Anyway, derail.
Yeah, this is an excerpt from Article 12. It says, De Fra Immonde, which is, let's see, The Woman in the Moon is the translation. It's a 1931 film that proved to be rather prophetic. And if you look at the pictures in that article, it shows pictures of like astronauts in a spacesuit. It shows a shuttle with like the framing around it, kind of that
So
cylind-
he's identifying this as
cylindrical.
maybe like a what we copied.
Yeah, the way it was referred to here is like the film proved to be rather prophetic, and that's because the film was made in 1931. So, you know, 40 years before
Yeah.
we actually put anybody on the moon, or like we made a film putting somebody on the moon. It's kind of like the timeline of this new White Men Can't Jump film. Like it's about that same amount of time before they do a relaunch, is my
Yeah.
point. Um, and then he also just kind of in passing says Fritz followed this up with a movie called M, just the letter M. It's the tale of a sadistic pedophilic serial killer guided by voices in his head.
Oh
I wonder
gosh.
how he came up with that plot line. So that is yeah, but I mean it's M like Manson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't even connect that.
Yeah. Um so yeah, just the idea that like the CIA possibly just ripped off this guy's movies from the early
It's
30s
probably all the
because
paperclip guys that we brought back
yeah,
over.
yeah,
They
I'm
just told
sure
us what they were working on, and
Von
we said that's not a bad idea.
yeah, well, I
Let's
mean,
do it.
this is in the same articles where it's talking about Von Braun working with NASA.
NASA.
But yeah, maybe Von Braun's talking to some of the CIA guys and he's like, "Oh man, I tell you, if you really want the rocket to look legit, you should see this movie." And this spacesuits, they don't look very good. They don't look as good as the ones in the movie that I saw when I was a kid. Because back then, you know, with no internet and no awareness of other cultures' film libraries and
Yeah.
things
How
like
would you
that,
see a indie German film?
how would we know at all what any of that
Oh,
is?
von Braun.
But yeah. But what I mean is like just as a regular American civilian, you know, you've been told by
Yeah. No, it wouldn't.
Walter Cronkite, we're going to the moon. The first time you saw a spaceship was on the news. You didn't see it on the
It's
Woman
all
in the
coming
Moon
through
movie.
screens.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And those pictures are funny. So if
I'm
you
gonna
go
have to go
check
back
out,
and look at
yeah.
that again. Can you find the movie somewhere?
I didn't look for the movie. I just was happy to see the pictures.
I'm gonna look for the movie
Yeah.
or Rumble.
Yeah, maybe it's in Rumble. I don't know. Um, so yeah, that's Article 12. I mean, it's not all of it, but I'm just saying that was the thing that I thought was really interesting. Let's see. Article 13.
We're almost there. That's
Yeah.
the poop part.
This is it. Yeah. Dude, just dive right in. Due to international treaties declaring that no country can lay claim to real estate on the moon, you see, Tranquility Base itself cannot be declared a historical landmark. So, California's Historical Resources Commission, in its infinite wisdom, decided to declare that all the artifacts allegedly left behind are now, quote, historical resources. This is said to be a first step towards the site being declared a national landmark and ultimately a UN World Heritage Site. The list of protected artifacts includes specifically human excrement bags. So it goes on to say,
Well, they just listed the entire,
I think they must have
Yeah.
done a catalog of
what do
everything.
they call that on a sailboat? Yeah.
Oh
You know
yeah,
what I mean? The entire,
yeah. That's
there's a word for
It's
it.
not bill of materials. It's
No.
manifest.
And manifest.
Yeah, manifest. Yeah, that must be just a manifest. Like we left our rover up there. We left our machetes. We left the module. Oh, and we did leave those bags up
Bags
there.
of poop.
Yeah, we left those up there too. Well, I mean, you wouldn't. This was back before there was a "Don't Lay Your Trash on Oklahoma" campaign. And I hear interviews fairly often of people talking about growing up in the 60s where littering was not a big deal. Like we would hit, the family would go on a road trip, we'd stop at a McDonald's, and then we would load up on French fries and everything. And we just loved to throw the trash bag out the door, like out the side of the window on the highway. And that was just what you did with your trash. So to me, this is like, well, yeah,
That
that's what we
reminds
would
me
do.
of that Alice's Restaurant song that Arlo Guthrie would do.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
I don't know this
It's
one.
like a 15-minute song. And he's just telling a story, but he leads up to being arrested on Thanksgiving because he dumps a bunch of litter on the side of the road.
Funny.
And yeah, it's funny. Grew up listening to that. It's funny how that one is, just listening to it live is just, I actually got a chance to play with Arlo Guthrie a long, long time ago.
Uh-huh.
And he had just started to, I asked him, "Are you still doing Alice's Restaurant?" And he's like, "Man, I had to start getting a teleprompter about 10 years ago. Too much LSD and just
No kidding.
fried my brain."
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah,
it was
so
like
he-
locked in there and
he
then it's
had-
gone.
Well, if you listen to the song, I mean, it's a long story. And
Yeah.
the point was he did a version live that got really famous, and he used to kind of improv it. So every one would be a little bit
Okay.
different.
Yeah.
But the one way he did it live, it was just so good. If he ever missed a part, he said people would get really
Sure.
upset with him.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't do that. But it's a long story. So he's like,
Mhm.
yeah, you might miss something. So then he had to start doing the teleprompter to make sure he included every part of the story
Yeah.
exactly the way it's supposed to be told so
Yeah.
that the stupid hippies don't get upset at him
Yeah,
and complain
oh,
in the
yeah.
parking lot.
It's exactly.
I got to hang out with him at this folk festival in a parking lot at the hotel. There's like nothing around. And we were just at night hanging out, and he's like telling us all of his acid trip stories. And he said something like, the last time I did acid, it was on Thanksgiving. And he said he went down to the basement to get something out of the fridge, and the walls around him started melting, and he couldn't find his way out for hours. And he said, and that's the last time I ever did it. And I mean, I think I was like 17 or 18. I'm
Yeah.
like, good advice.
Yeah.
No LSD.
Yeah.
Stay away.
I fall on both sides of that. There's part of me that goes, yeah, that should be the last time you do it. But then there's another part of me that goes, well, you don't want that to be your last time. You like for it to be like a
He said it was pretty
fun
terrifying.
memory. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He scared me straight on the LSD. I've never touched this stuff.
Well, he knows better than most people, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, didn't mean to name drop.
Well, I didn't
But
think ill of you
hang out
for
with
it.
famous musicians, so that's what I
What do you
do.
want me to say? Yeah. I'm buddies with
I'm
I'm
friends,
buddies with Barney Hill's niece. I
I'm
don't know.
friends with George Knapp now.
Yeah.
So
George Knapp, and you've been in the Tulsa world.
I was in the Tulsa world.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's button up this moon landing.
Okay.
What do you say? What's his kind of final?
Well,
Take on
Article 14, I just made a note of. He makes this point a lot, but seriously, I don't know of any other situations where we regress rather than progress in a given field. Just one of his quotes here is, there they go again, pretending as though we've never done this before. Already we've heard from NASA stereotypes about how we haven't yet solved the radiation problem. And that's just one more. We didn't really talk radiation, but that's just one more barrier in this landing on the moon
I've heard some
journey.
people conspiracy theorize, whatever, that we messed up. I think we're about to lose a battery. Oh, if we lose you, Dave, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Um, but that there's too much radiation. Like that's a new phenomenon. Like when they went, maybe there wasn't, and that like actually we were blowing up a lot of nukes in space, and we actually screwed up the
Oh,
radiation.
well,
And I don't know if that's believable. I'm gonna try to save your camera. Keep going.
yeah. I mean, when you mentioned blowing up nukes in space, one of the right when we first discovered is it Van Allen belts? Is that
Yeah.
what it's called? Right when we first discovered the Van Allen belts, somewhere in one of these articles, the account is that a scientist says, "We got these radiation belts up there. That's what like keeps our planet in order and like keeps our atmosphere from letting too much radiation in." And one of the officials from our government's response was, "Let's set a nuclear weapon off up there and see if we can blow that belt up."
Well, yeah, that's
Like,
the.
how unwise is that to go, "Oh, that's what keeps our planet safe?
I've
Let's
told you
let's see
about
what
that,
we."
that they wanted to blow up a nuke on the moon.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that was a real thing that you could look up, the history of it. But when we were trying to, you know, muscle in with the Soviets,
Mhm.
that was a legitimate
Like,
plan
was
that
that gonna be like a
Kennedy,
power stroke? Like,
yeah,
"Look at what
like
we can do?"
guys like Carl Sagan were behind this, and they were like, "What we should do is set off a nuclear bomb on the moon
That'll teach him.
to teach, to show our." And JFK was the guy that canceled that. He said, "No, we're not blowing up a nuke on the moon. You're crazy, military-industrial complex." And the idea that mainstream scientists like Carl Sagan were behind that is
Yeah.
is
Uh-huh.
absolutely that's almost as crazy as killing Tusco. That's almost as
Between
crazy as LSD in an elephant.
this and our dive into Parsons, I've come across a lot of accounts of scientists not being the most like practical and like level-headed people. They're Yeah, I mean, I'd count like the idea of like, well, let's set a bomb off on the moon, and you go, "You're the scientist, aren't you supposed to?"
Not the environmentalist.
Well, and there's another little quip in here somewhere about we didn't talk about it much. It's one of the I think it's a lot of people know about when we were doing testing here and the module got too much oxygen. There was a spark and
Mhm.
it killed the
Yeah.
astronauts
Yeah.
inside. So that's tragic. One of the scientists is on record of saying, well, on the upside, uh, we did learn a lot about,
Yeah.
what could happen. And you're just going like, "Are you crazy, dude? Like you just lost these
I think
3."
it's maybe guys that are on the spectrum and they just
Yeah, they
like
don't
they're
have the awareness to not say that. Yeah.
we can blow up a nuke on the moon. Why not? Let's
That's
try it. That'd be
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
it's,
let's
it's like
try
these are
it.
our toys. Like why wouldn't we play with our toys? And no, maybe some toys should not.
The closest person I know to people like this is my brother-in-law, and in his more manic stages, I can kind of see him like really into something and going, "Yeah, let's yeah. Well, we just okay, yeah, let's blow a thing up there." Yeah.
Thankfully, maybe that's why they killed Kennedy because they wanted to nuke the moon and
Yeah.
he said no
Mhm.
and wasn't acceptable.
There are a lot of reasons they wanted to kill him.
So after looking at all of this, are you willing to give us an opinion about what you think, or would you rather remain anonymous in your opinion? Of you started
Boy,
with assuming, of course, we went to
this
the
is
moon,
yeah, I don't
and now I've run you through all of this.
yeah.
Do you
Now I've got my daughter
now your
spitting
daughter's
out
saying stuff that's going
yeah,
to get you called into the
indoctrinated saying we
principal's
didn't do
office?
it. Um, yeah, the most compelling argument is that, well, 2 things. One, I don't know of any other area in our history, particularly in technology, where we have a great accomplishment and then decades later go, "Boy, one day we hope to get a fraction of the way back there."
Yeah,
Um, and then the other thing is, again, with my recent dive into Vietnam and learning about how many uh, how much misinformation was fed to America during that time in regards to what we were doing in Vietnam and what we were trying to get accomplished. Um, I go, so yeah, we were lying about that and a few other things, but we were totally on the up and up with this moon landing. It's the same president. It's the same people talking to us.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to that original podcast we did and why go back to Kennedy, because if they're willing to kill the president right next to his wife in front of everybody, I mean, yes, of course they would fake him. like the gloves are off at that point. And you
Yeah.
go, well, would they, do any number of the, different conspiracies we talk about? They killed the president, and now his own nephew is running for president,
Mhm.
saying, yeah, they killed him. We knew it, and oh my God.
I
I just
cannot.
think we're in a position. I guess my thought is, I'm not in a position to know.
Yeah.
Like, it looks like we didn't land on the moon. It
Mhm.
looks like NASA has not been honest about a lot of things. Looks like you lost all the tapes. You
Yeah,
lost the
that
tapes.
is
Yeah,
crazy.
I don't. That doesn't make any sense. And
Mhm.
so maybe there's a national security reason that we never saw the tapes. Maybe that's. I don't believe that you lost them though. I don't believe that for a second. I kept my little Arrowhead rock, so you would keep your moon
Yeah,
rocks.
you said it. Yeah,
Um,
exactly that last week, and I thought the same thing the first time I heard it. Like it, with as much bureaucracy as we have, and with as much of a swollen list of staff we have on the government, you can't tell me there's not
I
a whole
have
department.
I have video footage of us playing gigs together 15 years ago.
You don't even want the
I don't
footage
even
anymore.
want it. I don't even want to see it. It's on my computer though. I have it
Yeah.
on a drive somewhere, and I'm an idiot.
I found today a picture of me next to Bobby Keys, the saxophone player from the Rolling Stones,
Oh no way!
from again 15 years ago. I didn't intend to keep that picture,
You
but
kept it just out of
I still have it.
I don't know.
Yeah. So you got to do your name drop. There was mine. Right. Finally got one in there.
That's a good one.
But my point is just agreeing with you. Yeah, I've got stuff I don't even intend to keep that I come across.
So yeah, so it's like if you establish somebody is a liar, and maybe a pretty bad liar, and you say, "Well, are they telling the truth about this one big thing?"
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, probably not. They lie about
Right.
everything else.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're probably lying about that too.
Uh-huh.
I get the people that would know is those guys that set foot on the moon, and you know,
Yeah, I guess I don't feel strongly enough about it to where if I were at a dinner party with an astronaut, I don't think I would bring it up and like
especially not Buzz.
no. Yeah, I'm not going toe to toe with Buzz Aldrin.
If you want to laugh, get on his Instagram,
Yeah.
because he is trolled by so many haters.
Is that
And
right?
it's like the comments are always like, "You're amazing. That was so cool." Blah blah blah. And it's like, you didn't land on the moon, you fraud. And I'm sure he just never responds, but
That's
it's
good.
plagued him. There's a reason he probably had to go to AA and had a little bit of a rough patch
It's
there. Whether it was because he was holding a deep dark secret, or he's getting harassed by
I thought
everybody
about
everywhere he
that
goes.
today too.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, let's say you really are the only one that knows whether you went to the moon or not, if you're Buzz Aldrin or any of the others. And that would be maddening to have done something so amazing. And like I imagine I wasn't there, but the testing that you have to go through to earn your spot to be the guy that goes on the moon is extremely rigorous. So you jump through all these hoops, you beat out all the other awesome pilots and soldiers and everything. You go to the effing moon, you come back, and then some dork from his basement is typing like, "You're a fraud."
Yeah. Of course you
Yeah.
punch him in the face.
Yeah.
You'd also punch him in the face if you had to play along with that as an elaborate hoax, and you also happen to be that talented. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
you could
right.
have done it,
Yeah.
but they faked it, and then
Yeah.
they said you can't ever. And then you have to take that
Yeah.
garbage your entire life,
Yeah.
knowing, yeah, I'd like to be honest, but I can't, because then they'll kill my whole family.
Yeah.
whatever it
Right.
is that
Yeah,
they do.
whatever it is. Gosh,
Did I ever
he's in a
did
tough
we
spot.
ever talk about that Norm Macdonald bit about Harrison Schmidt?
No.
He's on late night, one of the late night shows, and the point he's making is, he says, Harrison Schmidt, and he's like, "You know who that is?" And Conan's like, "I don't know." He's like, whatever mission, one of the Apollo missions, man walked on the moon, and he's like, "And you don't even know his name." Like, what is a guy? He's got Harrison's like, poor guy's got to be standing there going, "What does a guy got to do to be famous? I walked on the moon, and that nobody even knows." So that could be like, the attention span of the American people is so short.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
that's why we stopped, is because, we're spending all this money on it, and then nobody even cared.
That is also very American for us. I mean, we touched on it last week, but I heard it again today reviewing this was people were the news stations were starting to get inundated with calls because viewers were getting annoyed.
Yeah.
Like, ah, you guys broke into my television show with another moon landing.
Yeah.
Jeez, enough already. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Harrison
so
Schmidt
American.
just
Which
found it. I saw
was
it
he the
here.
last one or
I don't know if he's
I think it might have been the last one.
um he's proficient.
Edgar
So
Mitchell was the last one, actually.
December 1972, so it's certainly towards the end
You
of.
should know his name though.
You should. Yeah. Apollo 17 looks like. Yeah, he collects some lunar specimens in Apollo 17. He fell while he was on the moonwalk. Huh. Rough
Well,
ride. Sorry.
anyway, thank you for listening. I think that does it for the moon landing. I think we're good with moon landing. We might bring it up for fun, but I don't think we need to do a part 4.
No, I don't think so.
I think we're good.
Yeah.
I would encourage everybody to go look at Wagging the Moondoggie, listen to the audio version. I don't know if you watched A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon yet, but watch that. It's a fun conspiracy, and it's fun that I mean you're just always tugged back and forth.
Yeah.
Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just fun.
I think I do know.
I think I do know too, but I could meet with my friend here in the future, and her dad might be yelling at me on the phone that we did go to the moon. I can prove it. Here's my moon rocks. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, share. We'll keep growing this conspiracy dad, family, and we'll see you guys at the next one.
That's hilarious. Harrison Schmidt. He's a real guy.